It is estimated that only 35% of families use a financial advisor. And if you're anything like me, you didn't grow up with financial advisors. I didn't even know what a financial advisor was when I was growing up. My parents had never used one. So I often thought, how does somebody know if they need a financial advisor? And what complexities are they facing when they go to hire that financial team? Hey everyone, I'm Jacob Turner, former Major League Baseball player and current co-founder of Moment Private Wealth. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the 4 most common times that I see families engage with a financial team, the complexities that they're facing during that time, and the value that I got out of hiring a financial advisor when I was a professional athlete. The first and the most common time that I see families engage with a financial advisor is when time is limited, right? Time is the one finite resource that we have. It's the one thing that we have that we can never get back. The most common time that I see is when families are navigating a lack of time and they're saying, I have all these things on my plate. These are the things that I really want to be focusing on. And oftentimes it's not things that are in their personal financial life, but a lot of the things that they are focusing on with their time are often reflected back in their personal financial life. Their net worth is continuing to grow. Their wealth has been continuing to build. And they're saying, I really want to make sure that I'm maximizing all these sacrifices that I'm making in all these other aspects of my life. The second time is when complexity is increasing. I know for me, I felt like I had a lot of the answers when it came to personal finance. I'd studied, I'd read all the books, I was listening to all the podcasts, I was consuming so much information. But the reality is sometimes the complexity that I had in my life was increasing at a faster rate than what I could take in the information. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I see for families that look to engage with a financial team is that complexity starts to grow. For us at Moment Private Wealth, we work with professional athletes and high growth entrepreneurs. So that complexity usually looks like now they're signing a draft contract. Maybe they're hitting free agency. For a business owner or an entrepreneur, maybe they've gone from having 1 or 2 employees where they were really a solopreneur to now they're really building an enterprise business. Maybe they're acquiring other businesses and they're saying, not only is my time limited, but my complexity is also increasing. And I want to make sure that if my complexity is increasing, I have experts on my team that can help guide me along the way. The third time, and this is one that really hits home with me, is what I call the cost of being wrong. So the reality is in financial services, oftentimes people talk in percentages. In the real world, nobody ever talks in percentages. So let me give you an example. If you had $1 million and you were making an investment decision with that $1 million and it changes by 5% on a daily basis, that's a $50,000 swing that you're talking about. If you have $10 million, that 5% swing isn't $50,000, it's $500,000. So when I say the complexity starts to grow, time starts to go away, and the cost of being wrong becomes real. If you're going from having $100,000 invested to $1 million invested to a $10 million net worth, every opportunity that you have, every decision that you're looking to make, all of a sudden the stakes become a lot higher. And I know for me, when I was starting to grow my net worth, I was saying, man, if I make one mistake here, even if it's a little mistake from a percentage point standpoint, maybe it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5%, that mistake is going to cost me a lot of money in terms of real dollars. So the third thing that I see is when the cost of being wrong rises, that's usually when families are saying, you know what, maybe it makes sense for me to potentially engage with a financial team. The fourth time is really a personal one, and it doesn't happen on a spreadsheet, but it's when peace of mind trumps everything. And what I mean by this is oftentimes we look at financial decisions on a spreadsheet, on a calculator, maybe in some formula, and we say, based on this formula, based on this spreadsheet, based on this calculation that I have, I should do X, Y, and Z. But the reality is oftentimes one of the biggest reasons why somebody hires a financial team is that when they lay their head on that pillow at night, they know they're good. And I can't tell you how comforting that feeling is. I know that feeling. I know the feeling of sitting there and saying, I think I'm making all the right decisions. But when I sit there and I really think about it, I wonder, am I making any mistakes? Is there anything that I'm leaving on the table? Because I know how hard it is to earn that money, right? I know the sacrifices that me, my wife, and my family made to be in this financial position. I really want to make sure we're maximizing it. And I also want to make sure that I have peace of mind around it. And the reality is when it comes to personal finance, everything that we're doing in personal finance is personal to you, right? So that spreadsheet, that calculator, that formula, all those things can be great tools. But the reality is you want to make sure that they're connected to goals in your life. If they're not connected to goals in your life, oftentimes there's anxiety that starts to build. But what are the sorts of complexities that usually families or individuals have when they look to engage with a financial team? We talked about some of those inflection points in their life that they might be trying to solve for, but what are the actual complexities that a financial advisor can help them solve? And I think think the easiest way that I break this down is really the 6 areas that we cover at Moment Private Wealth. The first one's cash flow. Oftentimes they have either uneven cash flow, they have cash flow coming in from all different sources, and they're really saying in really simple terms, like, how do I give direction to this? Where should I be saving, spending, and giving away this money? And how should I be doing it most efficiently? The second area is taxes, right? As your income goes up, the reality is you're going to be paying more in taxes, but you want to make sure that you're doing this strategically. You're starting to think about, okay, what are the moves that I should potentially be making to not just lower my tax bill in that given year, but lower my lifetime tax bill? The third thing I think that comes into play here from a complexity standpoint is, how do I protect what I've been building? And when I think about protection, it really comes in 2 forms. The first form is insurance. That might be life insurance. That might be property and casualty insurance. You want to make sure that the biggest risk that you have in your life, those things that you think there's no way that's going to happen, are covered, because the reality is they could happen. And you don't want 10 years of building a certain level of wealth or net worth to go away because they weren't covered properly. The second area of that's estate planning, making sure that the assets that you have, everything that you've worked really hard for, has direction around it. So think about it like this. The analogy that I like to use is a parking garage. If you built a parking garage around your assets, it would help protect it in the inevitable storm that might come. And then if those assets ever left that parking garage, you would want there to be an attendant there. And that attendant says, hey, you know what? They gave some direction around where they want you to go with this. And that is ultimately what you're trying to do, because as that wealth builds, you want to have that protection. The fifth area is the investment portfolio. I think about investments more so as this holistic approach of saying, what are all the different investments we have, right? For us, if we're working with athletes and entrepreneurs, the athlete might be investing back into his personal brand. He might be investing back into his on-field performance. Those are all investments. The entrepreneur might be saying, should I be investing back into my business and continuing to grow and scale this? Should I be throwing money over the wall and investing in something that's not correlated to my business? Should I be looking to go out and buy another business? Those are all things that come into play when you think about, what does that overall investment portfolio look like? The last area that they face is they have all these different people on their team. I'll speak for myself. I know as my net worth grew, as the complexity grew in my life, I started to add other individuals on my team. It started with just a financial advisor, and then it was my CPA, and then it was my estate planning attorney, and then it was my agent, and it was my business attorney. And I had all these different people, but the reality is I wanted to make sure that all those people were talking to each other, because I didn't have them in the same room every single time I was having that conversation. It was super important that as the complexity grew in my life, that I made sure that all those professionals were communicating with each other. We've talked a little bit about the 4 different inflection points that families typically face when they're looking to hire a financial team. We've talked about some of the complexities that they're facing internally and how a financial team could potentially help them solve that. And the last thing I want to touch on is, why did I hire a financial team? I would consider myself a really well-educated investor, but I also know I have my blind spots. And there was really 2 key reasons and 2 huge values that I felt like I got from having a financial team. The first one was making sure that I had everything in one place. My wife, although she's super smart with money, she's not in the day-to-day weeds around our money like I am. And I wanted to make sure that if something was to happen to me, that she had one point person that she could call, that she knew that essentially the train could stay on the tracks. And the second thing was, going back to some of the complexities and some of the inflection points that families face, I was facing one of those myself. The cost of being wrong became really high. And I wanted to make sure that I had somebody that could give me that agnostic advice. I know I have my own biases. I know I have my own blind spots. And oftentimes some of that advice could really help me from making that one big mistake that could derail my financial plan. So if you're sitting there and you're listening to this video and you're thinking, maybe it's time for me to potentially hire a financial team, make sure you check out one of my most recent videos. I talk about 10 questions that I think anybody should ask if they're looking to interview financial advisors. We'll put a link in here to it. If you're a professional athlete or you're an entrepreneur and you want specialized advice, consider checking us out, momentprivatewealth.com. You can book an intro call right there, and you can determine if you feel like we're a fit to potentially help you. If you like this sort of thing and you want to keep getting smarter with your money, make sure you like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you on future videos.